You're with Arise News in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. I'm Charles Eniagolu. It's Friday, the 24th of February. Good morning and welcome to Thisday Live. Our top stories at this hour. Violent protests erupt in Abuja in response to xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in South Africa. Plus, killed by a nerve agent. Malaysia says a weapon of mass destruction was used in the murder of North Korea's Kim Jong-nam. And the bounce back continues. The Naira extends its gains on the parallel market to 480 to the dollar. Also on the program, getting ready for the Oscars. Our team in Los Angeles have been doing the rounds of the pre-parties. We begin today right here in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, where dozens of protesters have attacked and vandalized the headquarters of the South African telecoms giant MTN. The attack was apparently in retaliation for violence against Nigerians in South Africa earlier this week. Hundreds of protesters also staged what they called an anti-xenophobia protest outside the South African embassy in Abuja. The protesters, mainly students and members of the National Youth Council of Nigeria, warned they would attack other South African companies operating in Nigeria unless authorities took immediate steps to end violence against African nationals. In the past few days, Nigerian nationals have been attacked in the capital Pretoria, and 34 foreign-owned shops were looted in parts of Pretoria. The attacks have triggered condemnation by the Nigerian government and a call by MPs for Nigeria's ambassador to South Africa to be recalled. There are about 120 South African companies in Nigeria, including telecommunications giant MTN and the supermarket chain ShopRite.
Government is deeply concerned about outbreaks of violence, which may result in loss of life and/or damage to property. This is why Cabinet has firmly pronounced on this matter and has expressed full support to ourselves and the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster to move speedily in resolving these issues to the satisfaction of communities.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Bolaji Adebi, the Deputy Editor of Arise's sister newspaper, Thisday. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. This is, of course, headline news in your newspaper, Thisday. Tell us more about what happened. I understand a crowd of protesters turned up at MTN headquarters and essentially attacked it.
Well, it says attack. Well, I think it's more of picketing. And like you have rightly said, it was a protest, to protest the attack on Nigerians and other African nationals in South Africa. Well, I think that it's more also a protest, to protest the government's more or less inaction, over all these attacks.
Right. Well, I want to talk about that in a minute, how the government's responded. But I'm more sort of concerned to talk about how much damage was actually done to the building and its facilities, because we understand the building was vandalized, mobile phones were taken and stuff like that. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, we didn't see much damage to the building, because when you talk of vandalization, that means that there's extensive damage to the building. I don't think that's what happened. Of course, the problem with protests like this is that you never know how it will end. The protesters, started off with a peaceful demonstration. Then, of course, along the line, that hoodlums will join the protest. I think that was what happened. But
right. So you think it was hijacked by hoodlums, basically, the protest?
I think that's what
a perfectly legitimate protest. Yes. And apparently, though, more threats from them of further attacks targeting other South African businesses, or perhaps further picketing, as you put it, which are, quite a fairly numerous South African businesses in Nigeria, aren't there?
Well, that is expected. Well, but I think that what the Nigerian government needs to do is also to wade in, and take more concrete actions. I think that if the Nigerian government had been, taking more serious action against the South African government when this occurred in 2015, I think that South
Right.
African government...
But just in terms of the sort of businesses that can be targeted in Nigeria, give us a sense, because you've got ShopRite, you've got DSTV, MultiChoice. Give us an idea of the kind of business. I understand there are about 120 prominent businesses.
There are about 120 businesses
right.
in the country. Well, I mean, the one that is well known is MTN and ShopRite.
Right.
And of course, I think the IBTC is Standard Bank.
Right.
Now, well, I think that you are not likely to find a situation where those businesses will be attacked physically.
Right.
It is expected that this threats will be issued normally.
Right.
And I think that it's now for the police to ensure that these businesses are protected.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, just remind us of what is behind these attacks and this rising tension.
Well, in South Africa, I think it's a reaction to bad governance. The youths are complaining against unemployment. You know, we have a similar situation in Nigeria also. And I think unemployment actually is a worldwide phenomenon. So it's led for those governments, to put in measures, that will ensure that the youths and the lot of people are employed. But I think essentially in South Africa, it's against bad governance. They struggle for independence.
Right.
And then they have seen that they now have the independence, but they don't have jobs.
And what's
the
been
standards of living are not increasing.
Right. What's been the response from the Nigerian government?
Well, that's what I said earlier.
Yeah, you touched on it.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. The Nigerian government has not really taken any concrete action. You will recall that in 2015, all the Nigerian government was able to get from the South African government was an apology. There were no compensations. Indeed, the issue of compensation arose yesterday again when the High Commissioner the South African High Commissioner to Nigeria, was asked, and he said very clearly that there were not going to be compensations,
right?
Because the South African government did not procure these xenophobic attacks. I thought that was an irresponsible statement, really, because if your citizens, the South African government had the primary responsibility to protect everybody, that resides in South Africa. So whether they are foreigners or they are South Africans, this is the responsibility of the South African government to protect them.
Now, it's not just Nigeria. There are several other African countries that have alleged xenophobic violence against them. Could this blow up into a serious diplomatic problem for South Africa?
It could if Nigerian citizens continue to demand that the government of Nigeria protects the citizens abroad. It could. And I think the South Africans, have a lot to lose. Like we said, there are about 120 companies, operating in Nigeria, and MTN alone has been making a lot of profit. Just one action of government, last year, led to a major loss for MTN. For the first time in several years, they recorded a loss because of sanctions imposed on them by the Nigerian government. So we think that if the Nigerian government, takes this issue more seriously,
right?
The South African government will be forced to take more concrete actions on the ground in South Africa.
And is it your sense that the South African government is not really saying anything about these allegations and apparent evidence of xenophobic violence against Africans in South Africa?
No, the South African government had made a statement. It has condemned it, but the issue is that it's not seen to be taking any concrete actions on the ground. In the first instance, the 2015, there has been no arrest.
Right.
Talk less of prosecution. Now, if that occurs, then it becomes an encouragement, for further attacks. So the government of South Africa has to take those concrete actions to discourage such attacks. But in Nigeria, you see that there has been no serious retaliatory move by Nigerians.
Okay. Bolaji Adebiyi, the deputy editor of Thisday newspaper, thank you very much indeed. Now, opposing sides in the Syrian war will today meet for talks, the first full day in this latest round of negotiations. Despite warnings of dire consequences should these talks fail, negotiators say they are not expecting miracles. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's negotiators are meeting the opposition for a fourth round of UN-brokered talks under the cloud of persistent violence and deadlock over the country's political future.
I'm not expecting miracles. We face an uphill task. It will not be easy. There is a lot of tension and there is a lot of suffering that everyone has been bearing, but we must apply ourselves to this task. Serious progress has been made in the last few weeks, and perhaps even in the last few hours, in moving towards a more united, inclusive, connected to the main opposition delegation.
Now, the murder of Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of North Korea's leader, was carried out by using a highly toxic nerve agent, according to Malaysian authorities. Mr. Kim, a defector from North Korea, died last week after two women accosted him at an airport, wiping a tissue on his face. Toxicology reports indicate he was attacked using VX nerve agent, which is classified as a weapon of mass destruction by the United Nations. There is widespread suspicion North Korea was responsible for the attack, but it has angrily denied any involvement. Now, residents of eastern Libya who are aged between 18 and 45 have been banned from traveling abroad without permission. Officials say the move is an effort to prevent people from joining terrorist groups abroad. Libya has rival administrations in the east and west, and much of the country is effectively controlled by militias. This new order comes just days after a controversial ban on women's travel was introduced and quickly suspended. It prevented women under 60 from traveling without a male companion. Around 332 migrants have been rescued from a boat in the Mediterranean Sea. More than 1,000 migrants have been rescued in the last 24 hours, and many more are expected to attempt the perilous journey as winter ends. Rescuers found 332 people on Thursday in 3 separate rubber boats traveling north of the Libyan coast, according to Proactiva Open Arms, the non-profit organization that operates the Golfo Azzurro rescue vessel. Now, reports of killings in southern Kaduna have divided Nigeria's Kaduna state along religious lines, with several incidents involving so-called Fulani herdsmen. There's been a lot of official talk at both national and state levels about bringing the killings to an end, but none's managed to bring it under control so far. The story took an unusual turn when a very popular record label owner, Audi Maikori, decided to tweet about it, and because of his popularity, especially on Twitter, his comments went viral. The very popular Twitterati found that elements of his comments were in fact incorrect, and though he apologized in subsequent tweets, the damage was apparently already done. He was arrested by the police for what was described as incitement to violence. Well, Aldu Maikori has just been released from detention, and he's with me in the studio to talk about his experience. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. You don't look very traumatized.
No, no, not.
Now, you've been very vocal about the alleged killings in southern Kaduna, which I understand is Christian-dominated,
Yes.
in Kaduna State, which is a predominantly Muslim state. Why have you been talking so much about it? Is that because that's where you're from?
Well, there are two sides of the story. First of all, I wouldn't say that Kaduna is predominantly Muslim. I would say it's a 50-50.
Right, okay.
And if you go to the history of Kaduna, it's a place for everybody.
Right, but it's Muslim dominated, though, is
I
it?
wouldn't say that. I would
Right.
say it's half and half.
Right.
But I've been vocal because, yes, partly it's because it's where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, I've always been vocal when it comes to issues of freedom of speech and where people are being...
Right. You're a social